So welcome everyone. It's Michael DeHaan from Quantum Leap Global, I'm the financial wellness leader there. And I've got Leigh Hearl with me today. How are you, Leigh?
Well, thank you. How are you, Michael?
Lovely, lovely. And Leigh's a part of our Women's Empowerment series, and we're going to go through some really interesting stuff. I met with Leigh probably in November or just before we sort of break for Christmas and New Year and whatnot. And I was introduced by Leigh from Karen McDermott, who's a good friend of both of ours. I know Karen supported you in putting your book together, which is Carbon Under Pressure, which we can touch on later. I also listened to your TEDx talk, which I just found really interesting. So just by introduction, so you're the founder of Meg Heart.
Yes.
And what I searched you on LinkedIn, so you're the voice, she's the voice for those that are silenced.
Yes.
And that just so resonated with me, and even showed a bit of vulnerability with me, which we'll go through later as well. So you've been doing that for almost a year?
Yes, I have actually. Well, we've been working actually more than a year on it all and the project, but it's really been up and running for almost a year.
Yeah. So what I'd like to do is just get to know you a bit.
Mm-hmm.
So would you be able to share just a bit of a backstory just about you so the audience sort of can get to know you?
Yes, well, I'm obviously the founder of Meg Heart, but if we go back, I think how I came to it was I've been in management roles and I've had my own business before. And it was many years ago in my first marriage where I kept a secret, and slowly I spiraled down. It became such a burden to me, and that allowed for the emotional abuse to start occurring within my marriage.
Yeah.
And I think the main thing that silenced me, that kept me silent, was shame. What it would do to my children, what it would do to my parents and me. And I also couldn't see or didn't want to break my family up. So I was rendered silent by this shame.
Yeah.
And before I knew it, I started spiraling out of control, and the depression, the anxiety set in, and I became suicidal in that I started feeling like there was no other option. There was no way out. I felt so trapped. And I couldn't see. It was just like I was in this big black hole, and I just, no matter what I did, I couldn't get out of it.
Yeah.
And it was when I started finding myself searching for the easiest way to end my life that I started to realize that, well, my children were my priority. They were my everything. But I needed to speak to someone. I needed to tell someone what I'm going through. And it wasn't until I said those words, I need to tell you something, that the weight started to lift off my shoulders. A curtain started to rise, and, you know, I started to see a glimmer of hope. But it was in doing that, I was able to start making decisions that I should have made a long time ago.
Yeah. And decisions for you, what I picked up before, and you did put yourself last, which I see a lot of, so you're more worried about family, your children, and I could be wrong, but I just felt that you were putting yourself last, and
most mothers do.
Yes.
We put ourselves last. I can remember trying to convince myself, just stay until the youngest is 18. Yeah. Just stay, just, you know, just put up with this, don't break the family up. And when the youngest is 18, then you can do it. You know, what I just look back now and it's insane. But at the time that you're in it, you just feel there's no other option. And I think, you know, you've lost all faith in yourself.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that a part of that is our sort of conditioning.
Mm.
And I spoke at this before where so men are brought up as the providers, this is generally speaking, and women as the carers. So you've got that conditioned within yourself. And that's, and as you said, you talked about, I think before, even in your TEDx talk, this sort of guilt and that sort of shame there, like I've got a carer's role, my family's sort of breaking up, or, you know, all these things are happening. I've still got to hold it together. But to the detriment of yourself. And then I'll like to put out there, because your children are watching you, to the detriment of them growing up and being an adult and understanding healthy relationships.
Definitely. And that's one big thing I learned, that, you know, you really, I thought I was keeping things from the children and protecting them, when in fact they're not silly.
Yeah, exactly.
They see through it. You know, I was in denial. And yeah, so if I did it all again, I wouldn't have made, I would have made those decisions a lot earlier.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's really good insight for our listeners to really look inside and looking at those secrets, because your TEDx talks about us keeping those secrets inside. I actually got shivers when you actually said, I need to tell you something. That sort of quiet moment where something's going to be very important, something there that you've held within your body for however long, and then what that creates for you. So sort of shifts that heaviness, it shifts that shadow, that and you talk about that sort of how often your mind sort of wanders back to that situation there and how it controls your life.
And that's really important to understand, because with secrets, you know, if you look at the research on secrets, is that the average person has 13 secrets, and they can be made up of all different types of secrets. You know, there's fun ones, there's, you know, I talk in the TED talk about what things I did as a kid and kept from my parents, and, you know, they're innocent, well, fairly innocent ones, but then there's secrets that, you know, carry guilt and shame, and they're the ones that weigh heavy on us. But it's not so much the actual secret, it's how much our mind wanders to it. And that's really important to understand. How often your mind wanders to it, then that causes rumination. And it's the rumination that spirals you into depression, anxiety, suicidal thoughts, just like it did for me. And
when I spoke with you November or early December, when you shared that and you created that space, I suppose, in regard to the secrets, and I shared with you in regard to my twin sister. So she was sexually abused by our father when she was 12 or 13 and kept that a secret. There was a lot of shame and embarrassment around that. So we didn't know about it. It only came to light when she was 16, and I was in the bedroom and she sat down and said, I need to speak with you. I need to tell you something. And again, I still know the quietness, I didn't know what was coming, but I knew it was big. But she'd already spiraled down because she kept it so long in her body, and then went down a bit of a dark path in regard to trying to work through that, and, you know, drugs and whatnot, and the mental health side of it, which we'll speak about maybe in a moment, but the mental health side. So back then there wasn't a good understanding about it. So she tried to commit suicide and she was locked up in an institution which didn't serve her. And then at 18, she actually took her life. So I think what you're doing is just so important, to actually understand the shadows, that heaviness, and keeping it in your body. And it's had nothing to do with her.
No.
And that's what you'll find,
Exactly.
you know, with a lot of people you look after. It's got, where's the shame? It's not.
The shame is placed often so incorrectly, and the victim carries that shame when it should be placed with the perpetrator.
Yes.
At the very feet of the perpetrator.
Yeah.
And until we start talking about these and opening up these conversations, you know, and to bring down that wall of shame, to help and support people to speak up and to shift that shame, because that shame does not belong to them.
Yes. Yes.
It simply does not. And, you know, the book Carbon Under Pressure, that's what, you know, with Rose, that's what she discovers. And we talked about that, and it's very similar to your sister. And it's so important that we open up these conversations to start changing for our children, for, you know, not just for us, but for our children.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was interested, we spoke just before we got online here around the importance of sharing their stories. So, and you talked about igniting the conversations, and otherwise people aren't the wiser. No one's the wiser in regard to what's going on if it's hidden. And then we can have, as a community, even, you know, Australia and global, we can look at the laws, we can look at, you know, the care side of it. We can actually, but if we don't know the full truth, if they're hidden there, we're only looking at fragments. We're not looking at the whole situation.
And there's many people out there, like, for example, Rose and her daughter Sophie, you know, they are forbidden by law to tell their story as it happened, because there is events in that story where the law forbids them to speak out, which is insane.
Yeah.
It's insane and it's wrong. So that's where Rose found Meg Heart, and we were so proud to deliver our first book, being her story. And it's so important, because if Rose wasn't able to speak up, how are we going to be aware of the issues within our legal system, the wrongdoings within there, within our police departments?
Yeah.
So,
and with that, so you talked about the book there, so that Carbon Under Pressure, and when was that launched? When did you launch that?
we launched that in November last year.
Is that your first book?
Yes.
Wow, congratulations.
Our very first book. Thank you.
And yeah, keep going, sorry.
I was just about to say, we've been so humbled with all the feedback. Many people are saying it's unputdownable. They've just read it front to back in one session, like they just couldn't put it down. Yeah, so it's touched a lot of people, so it's been great.
Yeah. So the people that are coming to you and opening up, what sort of changes, what changes do you see within them, within how they act out their life, you know, going forward?
I think there's been so many people have been touched in so many different ways, but I think, you know, one, for instance, is they're not alone. So a lot of them, and no one's stories are exactly the same. So there's, you know, bits that different people have taken out from, you know, different. And I think when you look at how it's told, Rose really speaks from the heart, and it's quite raw and very honest. So it's a rare insight into a mother, you know, going through trying to peel back the layers to understand and discover this secret that is tormenting her child and killing her. And she's doing everything she can to keep her alive. So there's many different messages within it, but I think the biggest message that we've had the most feedback from is breaking your silence.
Yeah.
You know, people are starting to have the courage to break their silence, you know, and I don't mean break your silence like stand up on a stage and, you know, tell, you know, when breaking your silence, if that's what you need to do, then great. But, you know, even just speaking up and confiding in a friend or someone you trust, or confiding anonymously, which you can do with us. But, you know, just confiding in someone and saying, I need to tell you something, starts to lift that load. And that's one of the biggest messages, but also the best feedback that we've been getting.
Wow. And I think that's just so powerful, as you said, so people can start living their true life. And the younger that they can do that, I actually see my daughter's 21, but I see a lot of young women now, I think, feeling more empowered, that
Yes.
the traditions around being the carer role is shifting. So I'm really encouraged around our future, but it's really still not keeping the secrets and, you know, really living your best life by not holding things in that will disempower you.
Yep.
And stop you from being your best. And as I said, you look at that sort of remuneration, that hopelessness, the depression and whatnot. So, and women don't deserve to go down that pathway, or men either, but
No.
it's a pathway that you've given hope that they can, in a safe way, share their story.
Yep.
And as you said, you've given them some pathways to do that. It doesn't need to be on a stage with lights.
No, it can be, yeah, any way. And there's so many different ways you can do it. But it's the first step, and it's so important, is to be able to do that.
So that's what I was going to just ask you, just I suppose in closing, is what's really your key message? And is that it? It's really taking that first step?
Yes, I think taking that first step and breaking your silence, you know, as I said, there's so many lessons in it, and people are finding strength, whether it's, you know, to seek justice or learn to let go of things that are beyond their control. And also realizing, another key message is realizing a mother's unlimited love and what it really looks like. But if you're looking overall, it's really, don't hide your painful secrets, because they become, you know, the biggest burdens, and they start to weigh so heavy on you. And you need to, and they prevent you from living freely and living your life to your fullest. So if you can break your silence, you know, and, you know, it's the bravest thing that you can do. And it's the first step to start your healing journey.
Yeah, yeah. So thank you for being a part of this. As I said, I was a little bit vulnerable because a lot of it resonates with me on a personal level. But I just think your message is so on point. And it's really looking internally and just, instead of just living your life on autopilot, just going, what are the things that aren't serving me? Which I just think is so important. So I love the work you're doing. And as I said, that take away the secrets. It's living your best life, and you providing that sort of framework for people to do that. So I'm really grateful for that. So thank you.
Thank you. And hopefully if we can start doing it, we can teach our children to do it.
Yeah.
And then that, you know, surely there will be, if you look, you know, and taking it one step further, hopefully we can reduce our mental health illness epidemic that we're facing.
Yeah, and it's a generational change, most definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
So a part of this, I will leave the details. I'll get the link for your book, and I'll put that in the notes of the interview. But again, thank you for adding so much value to the Women's Empowerment series, and thank you for your time.
Thank you, Michael. It's great to be here.